a quotation which encapsulates the point that she makes about the difference between a constitutional democracy and a parliamentary democracy. And here we go. Once we are satisfied on a construction of the Act that gives to the minister an unfettered discretion, it is no function of a court of law to curtail the scope in the least degree. Indeed, it would be quite improper to do so. The above observation perhaps so tried that it needs no statement. Yet in cases before the courts, when the exercise of the statutory discretion is challenged, arguments are sometimes advanced, which do seem to me to ignore the plain principle that Parliament may make any encroachment it chooses upon the life, liberty, or property of any individual subject to its sway. That is the function of courts of law to enforce its will. This is a quotation by Professor Pierre Force, who is the UCT Chair of Constitutional Law, which is in fact a quotation of a ruling by the Appeal Court in 1934. In this case, the court was required to rule on the validity of a banning order issued by the Minister of Police. For those of you who have not lived in the dark era of white rule culminating in apartheid, banning was a vicious piece of legislation used by the government to restrict the political activities of those who oppose its policies. My generation lived through many banning orders. We became experts in how to live with banning orders and dodge them. But when I was banished to the Limpopo province, to a place I had never heard of, Zanini, and my lawyer wrote to the then Minister of Police, Mr. Kruger, to inquire as to what is the reason for this banning order. The response was, it is not in the interest of the state to disclose the reason for your banishment. So the issue really comes alive when we have a president in Mr. Zuma who swore on the Bible at his inauguration to protect and be the custodian of our Constitution. But he has been, on more than one occasion, unambiguous in his attack on the constitutional democracy. The spin doctors have tried their best to camouflage what the president was saying, but at the end of the day, his view is that the judiciary is undermining the executive in the exercise of its power. So he definitely sounds like he's yearning for the return to parliamentary democracy that we talk about. It does not seem to have sunk into the minds of many in government, and probably not even in the minds of the majority of South African people, that our governance system is a constitutional democracy and not simply a parliamentary democracy. In any other democracy, the president may be facing an impeachment because he's there to be the custodian of this constitution. And any suggestion of undermining ought to be an impeachment. But not here. We don't do it. The Constitution is sovereign. and can only be changed by 75% majority in Parliament. The implication, as Professor DeForce concludes, is that in the absence of a coup d'etat, President Zuma's wish that the powers of the Constitutional Court should be reviewed and amended is never really going to fly. He will just have to take care of his business and take his chances in the courts, as he has done many times. He's a real muscle. But various that would affect his corruption and his bribery prosecution comes before the judiciary. He really uses the same constitution. Meanwhile, we hope that he really thinks before he talks, because it's undermining our democracy. To place the current onslaught on our Constitution in its historical context, it needs to be remembered that as a result of the experience of the abuse of power by the then minority parliamentary state, the ANC, as my sister said, in its Harare Declaration in 1989, insisted on a Bill of Rights as the cornerstone of the negotiation about the future. In a democratic South Africa, it said all shall enjoy universally recognized freedoms, civil liberties, protected under an entrenched Bill of Rights. South Africa shall have a new legal system which shall guarantee equality of all before law. South Africa shall have an independent and non-racial judiciary. When he inaugurated the Constitutional Court on February 14, 1995, former President Mandela made the now famous remark about the role of the Constitutional Court. And he said, "The last time I appeared in court was to hear whether or not I was going to be sentenced to death. Fortunately for myself and my colleagues, we were not. Today I rise not as an accused, but on behalf of the people of South Africa to inaugurate a court South Africa has never had, a court on which hinges the future of our democracy. Our current president is betraying the legacy of his own party, the ANC. Unfortunately, he's not alone in this betrayal. We can rightly assume that because it is the president who uttered this news, he has the support of his cabinet and all the leadership of the ANC. What is clear is that there is a conflict of values taking place. It is about transformation, and who is best to defend the spirit of our Constitution? That's what the debate is. We've got a values conflict in our society. There's nothing wrong with looking at whether or not poor people have access to justice, to what extent the judiciary has been implementing the letter and spirit of the Constitution. The question is, how is this to be done? The devil always is in the detail. Recognizing that the Constitution is the cornerstone of our young democracy, but at the same time, it is not perfect. I, together with other publicly known South Africans, participated in the founding of what is now known as the Council for the Advancement of the Constitution, CASA. The word advancement, as Patricia said, is deliberately chosen above the word defense because progressive constitutionalism is a pivotal principle of our system. The other principles are as follows. As the Supreme Court of the law of the land, the Constitution provides a framework for the social and economic transformation of South Africa and of the deliberative, participatory, and inclusive democracy. This framework, together with its underlying values, are founding principles, and they need to be protected and advanced. Second, the Constitution itself must be subject, she has said, to ongoing critical appraisal. There may be a need to debate and lobby for some changes, as has already been said. Then there is a third principle of the rule of law, which is critical as a building block in the pursuit of the concept of constitutionalism. Public and private power must be exercised within the law. Unfortunately, this is what the comrades don't do. The arbitrary use of power has to be curbed. Fourth, if it is to dispense justice that promotes substantive equality as well as procedural fairness, judicial independence is indispensable, if not a prerequisite for the rule of law and the integrity of the process. These are the founding principles. This is what people who were subject to a discriminatory system sat in Captain Park and in Parliament and made sure that these principles are embraced by our Constitution. One organization cannot accomplish this role of advancing and protecting the Constitution. The advance and defense of the Constitution requires the involvement of active citizens who defend our so-called first-generation rights such as security, privacy, freedom of expression, freedom of association, etc. But also works to make sure that we realize second-generation rights, universal access to housing, education, etc. We are failing in our role as custodians of this democracy. A major problem is that the vast majority of South Africans are passive subjects rather than active citizens. We sit back and expect the government to deliver. If it doesn't, our only recourse, it seems, is to protest, marching in the streets, very undignified to see old women like me burning clinics and burning landmarks. These are our properties. So it just shows how little we understand about the transition to democracy we have made. Together with Professor Njabulo, Ndebele, and Bongotso, we have formed a trust called the Citizen Movement for Social Change, which aims to engage all South Africans who are willing to embark on a journey of transformation from subjects to citizens, so that together we create a just, prosperous, inclusive, and equitable South Africa that our Constitution was designed to create. You, as young professionals, have a major role to play in helping your fellow citizens to embark on this journey from subject to citizen. Educating ourselves for democracy entails learning about the rights and responsibilities of citizenship. I sometimes wonder if some of the members of our executive actually have studied that Constitution. This is the unfinished business of our transition to democracy. The subject status of the majority of the population is sustained by ignorance, dependence, poor self-image, and a sense of powerlessness of those on the margins of our unequal society, which is growing more and more unequal every day. I would like to invite you to be part of the journey of shifting the mindset of South Africans so they stop perceiving themselves as being subject. We still talk about the ruling party. I don't get ruled by anybody. I am the sovereign. Yes. The Constitution is the rock on which our democracy depends. We dare not fail. History will judge us very harshly if we were to fail. We also owe it to future generations to be worthy stewards of this democracy. Thank you.